Tennessee had a pretty big weekend of official visitors for the third weekend in June to coincide with the big Boo Carter pickup. They had 8 open prospects and 4 committed prospects. We talked a lot about them on Friday with Jaru. And now we're back to talk about them again to see how things went. So, Jaru, as far as you're aware, how did this weekend of hosting go?
I would say overall the weekend went pretty well. The only thing that came out of this weekend is you saw a lot of kids who were a lot of prospects who were leaning Tennessee continued to lean Tennessee, which is good to see. But you also saw a lot of those offensive tackles we talked about on Friday that were more Georgia are still leaning towards Georgia. At least it seems so early on after this weekend. So from that standpoint, it may be a failure if you're looking to swing some of those kids. But a lot of these guys are recruitments that are going to go long that you don't see a commitment expected here soon. In particular, you look at a guy like cornerback Kai Bates, who took an official to Tennessee this weekend, loved it, but he's also going to LSU next weekend. So that's probably the biggest competition for him. If his visit goes well at LSU, might he commit to LSU during his visit like we saw with Florida? That's something we don't see often with Tennessee official visits. So overall, I'd say the weekend went well. You had some of your commitments peer recruiting other guys too, which is always a good thing, I think. And I would say biggest thing out of this weekend is Braylon Staley, wide receiver out of South Carolina, is probably going to trend more towards Tennessee now. I know Clemson and Miami are big in his recruitment, so we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, that's going to be a bit tricky, obviously, him being from South Carolina, but Tennessee's obviously got – Tennessee is the dream place for a wide receiver right now, and so that's a big deal. We mentioned earlier Edwin Spillman was there. That was his second visit. I would guess Edwin Spillman's a lock, right? He's just taking his visits.
Yeah, he'll be a lock. I mean, he's somebody who, like we talked about with Boo Carter, really, if you get that highly ranked and work that hard, you kind of earn the recruitment process. But he's continued to stay locked in on Tennessee, and he was out there pure recruiting guys.
Oh, so he was out there recruiting guys for Tennessee, even though he hasn't committed to Tennessee.
That's what he talked highly of Tennessee to other prospects, is what I was told. So
okay,
I would say that he's still basically a Tennessee lock, and like we talked about with Boo Carter, I wouldn't stress about him taking other visits. I know Notre Dame is a school that really, really wants him and is pushing hard, and they have a defensive-minded head coach, so that might play a role in his mind. But I would be more surprised than I probably ever have in my life if he didn't commit to Tennessee.
Yeah, and I know we talk about defensive-minded head coaches, but what Tennessee is showing is that it's not really preventing you from being able to be an NFL draft prospect. I mean, 2 years ago, Alontae Taylor was the second pick in the draft, was picked in the second round of the draft. And so Tennessee is still having its fair share of players. I mean, Byron Young got selected in this year's NFL draft. They're having its fair share of defenders go, even if they're giving up a lot of points. It's not preventing you from standing out as a defensive player. It seems like GMs and NFL scouts are recognizing this. And guys, look, at the end of the day, players commit to try to go to the NFL. You can think they committed to your school. They're committing to try to go to the NFL. So this talking point matters a lot. And as far as I'm aware, Jaru, Heupel's system doesn't seem to be a barrier for players trying to get to the NFL on defense.
No, and I think on defense, like you said, it's very friendly to those guys who are trying to put up stats and make a run for the NFL because it's so aggressive. So you see linebackers always on the line. No, I wouldn't say always, mostly on the line blitzing. You see a guy like Byron Young who can just pin his ears back and get after the quarterback most downs. So the system that Banks runs for Tennessee is friendly for a linebacker or a defensive lineman or an edge rusher who likes to get after the quarterback. And I could see that with a guy like Spillman, who's highly ranked. Obviously, he's an in-state guy, so that helps as well. But even when you're going out for, like we talked earlier about Williams and Warney, like those guys want to attack the quarterback and get after the quarterback, and that defensive scheme is helpful. You do have to be a little extra conditioned. I will say that. That has been talked about because your offense is only on the field for a minute. But still, you get to blitz the quarterback and play super aggressive instead of sitting back.
Right, which you would think, given the fact that he's 265 pounds, that would have to be a selling point for Kamari and Franklin, right?
Yeah, he's a guy that wants to be an edge rusher and be on the edge and getting after a quarterback over the interior. And his visit, from what I was told, went really well. He's a higher ranked recruit, and you could see people predict him a bunch of different places. But I would say Tennessee has at least solidified themselves as a top contender for him. He's going to officially visit LSU and Auburn as well. So we'll have to see how those visits go and what he says about them. But I would say right now, Tennessee is definitely trending for him.
Yeah, and for those who are curious, if the visits make a difference and you're choosing between Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU, that is where Tennessee wins. No offense to LSU, Jaru. No offense to Louisiana, but Tennessee's campus is nicer than LSU's campus.
And I would say their football facilities, Tennessee's now, especially with the planned renovations, can go mano-a-mano with any school in the country. So if a kid is looking strictly on facilities, I would say Tennessee could also win in that category.
Yes, it's a very good sign that a Mississippi kid, that Ole Miss and Mississippi State are not the main schools in the running, obviously. So I think for a kid from the Memphis area, Tennessee can beat Auburn for a kid from that area, and they should be able to beat LSU. That can go either way, but I think they should easily beat Auburn for Kamario Franklin if they want him. So, I mean, y'all are gonna hate me for saying this still, but Auburn is the worst place to live the SEC. Like, I would rather not be a football coach than coach at Auburn. I'm sorry, I just don't want to live there or be there ever. Mississippi State's right there too. Those two schools. What's your least favorite, Jairo? I don't know how many you've been to. What's your least favorite place to be in the SEC?
I don't know. Gainesville seems just like it's always hot. There's nothing really there. I mean, you're close to the beach, I guess, but you still have to drive a good 30 minutes. I've always disliked Gainesville, I guess I'd say. I don't know. I haven't been to many yet. Been to Lexington, I didn't really like, but I just don't like how hectic it was and the streets don't make much sense. But I'd say probably Gainesville. Something about it.
Yeah, but the average hotness factor of Gainesville girls, like, I think helps Gainesville a little bit.
Yeah, but then you have the weather. The average hotness factor of the weather is not.
That is true. Fun. That is a very,
I guess
very.
They do. I mean, they do sell, and you have to play right now. It's Dylan Napier, who's not very proven, because they did pretty good this weekend. But we'll see. I don't know. I'll visit a lot more SEC schools this fall, and I would say Gainesville has a lot of work to do in my mind.
Yeah, I can see that. We'll go to Florida too in a minute. To the message board, a couple of great points. Ranking Top Tom talked about he doesn't understand why every single receiver is not breaking down the door to play at Tennessee right now. ESPN pushing Ohio State and USC. Big media has always hate us. Okay, Ranking Top Tom, that's changing. Trust me, media is loving Tennessee right now. A lot of establishment people are loving Tennessee because the offense is so much fun to watch. And they are bringing down the door to play at Tennessee. If they're not going to Tennessee, it's because of playing time. They all want to go there. And
I think once Tennessee has a couple receivers or one receiver make it and have success in the NFL, that the Ohio State narrative of you have to go to Ohio State to go to the NFL will definitely quiet down.
I agree. It absolutely will. This happened with Tennessee in the 80s when they were wide receiver U, and it's going to happen again. And I think it'll happen with Cedric Tillman. Papa J says, what school is the quickest to get to the NFL is their question. Absolutely right. Seen a lot of talk what Jaru you brought up. Mr. Jones says defense gets more reps to show their skills. And Elias says, if I'm a pass rush specialist, I definitely am down with losing time of possession 2-1. Kind of like you're saying, you don't really care if your defense is giving up a lot of yards and points if you're getting sacks and you're racking up stats.
And you're still going to win games because your offense is scoring 70 points a game. So you can get 3 sacks, give up 50 points, and still come away with a win.
Yeah, that's very true. Exactly. So, Travis, I've got to show this text, this comment. This might be the winning comment of the day right here. If I was a bird, I'd fly upside down over the entire state of Alabama. It's not worth pooping on. Wow. Oh, Travis, that's a great one. Tuscaloosa is nice, though.
Yeah, I was just about to say the Hoover, Tuscaloosa-ish area is not the worst.
Yeah, it's not. Papa J says Columbia is horrible. It's hotter than 3 hells there. I'm not a Columbia fan either.
I completely forgot about Columbia. Everybody says that's their least favorite SEC spot.
Yes. Yes, I've heard a lot of that too. Racket.Tom, okay, we're talking about the debate on who things cover. He says they cover Tennessee because it makes them cash, but USC and Ohio State because they're true cash cows. Well, a lot of this, and I am going to say, a lot of this comes down to, for people who are curious about whether or not TV networks are biased to certain schools, they are. It has a lot to do with whether or not they like the coaches of those schools or whether or not there's a personal affinity for the program. USC got a lot of favorable coverage in the 2000s, for instance, because Pete Carroll held open practices. He let everybody come to practice, didn't care. Media members loved that. Florida State was a media darling because Bobby Bowden was the best interviewer in the business, and the same with Florida with Steve Spurrier. Fact of the matter is, when Fulmer was at Tennessee during their heyday, Fulmer was horrible to interview. It was the worst. He was cliches, a broken record. The we're working like heck to get better. I swear, if I had to hear that one more time at a press conference, I would have blown my brains out. It was the worst thing to hear. But portions of the program brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive, whether you're in Chattanooga, Knoxville, or Nashville. Go to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland.